Hey everybody, welcome back to yet another video. Today I will be talking about some of the biggest issues that Last Epoch is currently still dealing with. I made a video about a year ago, March 2020, where I listed the 6 biggest issues. And what I wanted to do in this video is go over those 6 issues and re-evaluate them and see, how have they been resolved over time? Have they been resolved over time? Or are they basically still the same issues that persist in this game? So I have the top 6. I wrote it down from the previous video, and the first reason or the first issue with Last Epoch in March 2020, as I identified it at least, was the combat. And I would say that the combat hasn't really improved all that much. A lot of the things have got new animations and everything, but if you ask me like, hey, does this combat like feel good, right? Is it like meaty combat? Does it like feel visceral? Is it like fleshed out? Do you feel that if you're hitting something that you're actually hitting something, right? That your blades, in my case, if you look at this rogue, are they hitting these flowers and these salamanders, right? Or this building? And to me the answer is no, right? It's still like a bunch of models interacting, but there is no real actual feedback. There's no real feel of combat. The action part of the action RPG is still a little bit lackluster, if you ask me. And I've been reading this also time and time again in the comments section. I think generally a lot of people would agree that particularly the action part, the combat part of this game is still not where it should be. Over the last year, definitely quite a few improvements have been made. I think also in some of the other departments that contribute to the feel of combat. But overall, I am still of the opinion that combat does need a lot of work in order to actually feel like satisfying. And I think that's the word maybe that I'm looking for, right? Is combat satisfying? Is it fun to go out and kill creatures? And to me, not necessarily. Like, I can mention a few games where it's a lot more fun. Alright, number 2, performance. Performance is a little bit of a tricky one, because performance kind of depends on your own system. And it's fair to say that performance has come quite a long way since April 2020 as well, and especially since April 2019. The game ran like absolute dog shit, and these days the game for me runs relatively well. I mean, you can see it in the background. This is the latest patch, 0.8.2H, and I would say performance overall, especially since the fix to the crafting UI menu, has been rather good. I'm running around on the Rogue at around 80 to 100 frames per second, which is fine. There are definitely frame drops. This game is not really optimized that much, but it has made a ton of improvements. However, I do feel that it's got quite a way to go still, especially if you take something like multiplayer into account, right? I mean, imagine running around here with 1 or 2 necromancers and a bunch of minions. That's going to be a total mess. I am fairly optimistic. There's also a big improvement project going on currently at AHG, because we are getting closer and closer to launch. The game is supposed to launch this year. Well, I'll make a video, I think, on whether I think that is a realistic timeline, but fine. And in order for this game to launch properly, you need better performance than it has now. Third gripe with the game a year ago is that there were no randomly generated zones. And I still hold this opinion, because there still are no randomly generated zones. You are still running around in the endgame and in the campaign in static maps. And to me, this has become more and more apparent. I have been playing this game for over 1,000 hours, and most of those hours are spent in the endgame, in the Monolith of Fate. And that is just getting a little bit boring, even with the new Monolith of Fate overhaul. I've said this also in my video regarding the overhauled Monolith of Fate. It's a beautiful system, honestly. The strategy and the whole web of echoes is really, really well done. However, the essence of, let's say, running echoes is still that you're running the same static maps over and over again. And to me, that is an issue. I actually have quite some issues with that, and to me it just feels like I know exactly where to go, and that's just not a feeling, it's also true. These days, there's a quest that requires you basically to kill a bunch of minions first, and then only then the location is revealed of the time gate. And I don't need to kill those minions because I know where the time gate is. I can almost get blindfolded and just walk to the location because I know exactly where this time gate is going to be. And to me, that's an issue. And I thought that, you know, maybe if they add more stuff into the levels, it's not really gonna matter that much. But you see, they just have a limited amount of locations to work with. They just have limited creative options because their maps are static. Now, a good reason for maps to be static is that you can do a lot more in level design, and I completely agree. But I would rather have uglier maps and more randomized maps with just more stuff happening overall than what we have now. So to me, the issue is basically exactly the same as a year ago, and I really hope that they're going to change this, but I don't see this change before launch at the very least, and they may not change it at all, but I think in the long run this is going to hurt them quite a bit. So the fourth topic that I handled in that video was the music and sound. This is a very subjective topic, I am fully aware of that. However, I do feel that, you know, it's not only purely subjective. I think you can look also from a more objective standpoint at the music, what kind of feelings, let's say, it's trying to convey, or what kind of feelings music like this is typically trying to convey, which is why you feel certain ways when you listen to music, right? You can definitely have a more objective view about that. And then you can ask the question, well, you know, with all that in mind, does the music in Last Epoch actually fit the scene? And the scene, to me, is usually, you know, is 80% of the time, it is this, what you're looking at right now. We're fighting monsters, basically all the time. And then you listen to the music, and what you're hearing are still quite a few of like dramatic, you know, melancholic piano tracks. There are absolutely beautifully arranged pieces of music in there, but I am still of the opinion that they don't really fit an action RPG. They would fit a walking simulator like Journey, or they would fit a JRPG when you're, I don't know, walking through the desert, or when you're exploring a new village, or anything like that. But you're not doing anything like that in Last Epoch. In Last Epoch, you are killing monsters, pretty much all the time. It is pretty much all you do. There are a few different events in which you kill monsters. However, the music typically doesn't change in those instances, which is one of the criticisms I have. But overall, I feel the music doesn't really fit the scene. There are clearly parts where it does. I really like the boss fights and the music that is playing over there. That is much more like bombastic music, right? That is much more, well, let's say fierce music. Music I would expect in general in a game like this. Now, I do sort of see what kind of feel they're going for, but I don't necessarily agree it is a feel that fits the game. Once again, it is a very personal opinion. However, I have heard this comment quite a few times before. I'm definitely not the only one that is having, let's say, some issues with this. And to further clarify my point, I am working on a video where I'm comparing music from Last Epoch to some of the other games, and then tell you a little bit what's going on in the music in those other games, and tell you what's going on in the music in Last Epoch, and then hopefully you have a better understanding of what I mean. My other gripe a year ago were some of the sound effects. I feel the sound effects have improved quite a bit. They're not entirely there just yet, but I feel the sounds at least aren't annoying anymore. Last year, a lot of the sounds were super sharp, not really mixed well, and stuff like skeleton archers or something, they hurt your ears, man. It was pretty horrible, honestly. And all of that stuff has been fixed, and now most of the sound effects actually sound pretty decent. I think there are still quite a few things that can be gained. I think the sounds should also be improved, also to add to that visceral feel of combat, which, you know, is partly sound as well. It's not only animations and physics. Sound is a big part of that, and the sound should be improved in order to achieve it. But overall, you can definitely see that since a year from now, they have made massive improvements in the sound effects department. So big props for that one. The fifth critic I had a year ago was endgame variety, and I think that the current endgame actually has a lot of variety. Now, clearly not the echoes themselves, right? I already touched on that, but previously, the Monolith of Fate, and previously is like a month ago, the Monolith of Fate was a rather linear and sort of static affair. That has changed an awful lot. The new Monolith of Fate is absolutely amazing. It is a great endgame system, and just the system in itself already offers a very decent amount of variety. The system itself is really fun to play around with. There's a lot happening. You can basically infinitely scale it and make it harder, and also infinitely get more and better loot from the system. The arena is still there if you are interested in something like that, which I'm not, but you guys know about that. But overall, I would say in terms of endgame content and realistically how much time these days you can spend in endgame, which I would argue is a lot, right? You can spend a lot of time in endgame if you want to. This has been practically for me resolved. So I would say, you know, the endgame variety is not really an issue anymore. And the sixth point of last year was a loot filter, because in April 2020 we didn't really have a loot filter just yet. You had to manually scroll through all the loot, especially after completing a monolith. And that was just, you know, it hurt my soul. So I was extremely glad we got a loot filter. I think the first version was like 8 months ago or something. And these days, the loot filter that is in last Epoch is really good. You can personalize and optimize that thing to your heart's content. It basically does everything that you want. I would love to have some sound effects in there so that I know if something drops off screen, right? That I get like a notification or something. Doesn't have to be custom, just like any sound would be good. I think that's an improvement I would really like to see. But apart from that, the loot filter is so good. It is, I think, by far the best in-game loot filter that you have. So maybe if they add some custom sounds or just sounds in general, and I guess small tweaks here and there, this thing is completely ready for launch. I would already be extremely happy with this at launch, to be honest. So those were the 6 issues. 2 of them got completely resolved. One of them is a very personal thing, the sound and music. And the other 3 are widely known and recognized, by the way, by the developers as well. That are issues. So the performance, the combat, and the randomly generated zones is still a contested topic, I guess. Overall, the steps that last Epoch has made in the last year is astonishing, honestly. In particular, this patch was insane, of course, but they have had some really big patches drop. Some new classes, some new other stuff to do, new chapters in the campaign. There's always something interesting when they drop a new patch, which means always something interesting roughly every 2 months. And it's been an absolute joy and pleasure following Last Epoch, playing along with Last Epoch and seeing how far the game has come. I'm really curious what is still in store. There are a few endgame systems lined up. There are a few subclasses still lined up, and some performance improvements, and of course multiplayer. Not something I am particularly excited about personally. I mean, I don't play these games in multiplayer, but I know a lot of people are. I think it's going to be a very interesting time when that launches. Let me put it like that. And I am just curious to see what else the devs got in stock for us. And that's pretty much all I got. So thanks so much for watching. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.